Welcome everyone to the Winning Together podcast. Glad you're here. Today, we're going to learn about, if you got trouble in your brain, trouble in your gut, if you got a rumble there, you want to figure out the connection between your anxiety and depression and your body, you are the right place. It's Shay, the brain warrior Aslet, and today, as our guest, I've got Michael. I'm mad, crazy, committed to brain health, McKinney. How you doing?
Doing pretty good today.
Glad to have you here. What we're going to go over and where we want to be by the end of this discussion here is we want you to have some tools and perspectives. One thing that I hope resonates with you while you're here today, Michael, is we're insanely practical. We care about stuff that works, and from talking with you and getting prepared, that's you too. You wanted to stay focused on things that worked and things that corrected what was going on in your body. We hope you have some ideas with some protocols. I loved how you use that when you've got stuff coming up, and primarily making the connections between your body and your brain and your emotions, and how when your brain is troubled, it affects your emotions. And when your emotions are not in line with your body, you've got sleeping problems, anxiety, depression, gut issues, and take us to that place of how you were invited by life to look at these things more seriously, and how that's turned into this place of suffering and being suicidal to a story and a real path of health.
Okay, yeah. It all began with a doctor visit. I had mucus on my chest, my throat was tightening, and I figured it was cold or flu or something like that. And so I went in there, and I ended up, getting prescribed an antibiotic. 2 pills into the antibiotic, I woke up in the middle of the night.
That's a very common antibiotic they prescribe you, right?
Yeah, it's azithromycin and or a Z-Pak. So, and a lot of people it doesn't affect. And I'm not as a whole completely against antibiotics. I just think they're way overprescribed. So in this, in that I woke up super suicidal after 2 pills, middle of the night, just feeling probably the worst I've ever felt in my entire life. I made it through the night and, just assumed that, this is a side effect and it would go away. After about a week, it hadn't gone away. And, I was still super suicidal, trying to struggle through days being this way. And so at that point, I went back to the doctor, and, we went in to try and see if we could do something to, curb the suicidality or help with it. And then at that point, I was prescribed some mental health drugs. One was Zoloft, and the other was Affexor. So the Zoloft I had the allergic reaction to, and so we decided not to do that one. My whole body pretty much rashy man. And then the venlafaxine or Affexor, that one is the one that made everything worse for me. And that sent me down the path of not only continuing to be suicidal, but having massive anxiety. The first 3 days were paranoia, pretty much, just completely paranoid about everything and anything. I had that. I quit digesting food. I quit, pretty much everything I could imagine for mental health was happening. Derealization, just feeling pretty horrible. Wasn't sleeping at all.
And let's put some perspective on this. So this is around 40. You've got a wife and a teenage son. Is that right?
Yep.
Okay. You've got a small business that you run, that you love, that you seem like an affable person. Being dark and broody, I don't think was part of your, makeup or character forever. And so this is coming on strong, fierce, and out of left field, really.
That's the truth. I've always been, pretty chill and relaxed. I've been known as, the guy that nothing bothers. I've been called that in the past. And so this is, this is a complete change in how I had to view and deal with life because it's the opposite of what I've known the majority of my life. And there's normal stresses of life, and you have to deal with that. But this changed everything. So yeah, that brought me to the point of I really didn't know what to do at the time. Because you're new to mental health, and at the point I thought I was just going crazy. To use that. I just didn't know what to do. And after I took the drugs, and mind you, I only took a half pill of the Zoloft and 1 pill of the Effexor, and that little amount, I was that sensitive at the time. And if you look in retrospect, and I look at the science of it, so we talk about the side effects of the azithromycin. The azithromycin, the suicidality, it doesn't happen a lot. It's very, very rare. One of the other side effects that's more common that can lead to different mental health issues is that it shuts down your liver. And so I assume a lot of the issues were coming from the fact that my liver wasn't working properly at that point of time. So it'll shut down the bile ducts in there, and the bile is super, super, super important in your body. So pretty much, turns off cholesterol production at that point, which that shuts down all your hormone and neurotransmitter production if you haven't got cholesterol. So
and you describe yourself as generally healthy. You're medium build, fit, active lifestyle, love to mountain bike, road bike, all of it, right?
Yep.
So then you're going to the professionals, and history with doctors is every few years as needed?
Yep, that's pretty much it.
Okay.
We didn't have any health insurance at all because we never went. And, it was the occasional here and there. Most of it, out of pocket, it cost $100 here and there, and that was it, So we really didn't, up to this point, bother with insurance. Still don't, but
but here you are going to the professionals to get this solved, and you're finding what?
Well, so we found that after I'd ended up, I'm suicidal, and after the venlafaxine, I'm not digesting food. I'm doing all this stuff, and I go to the doctor, and I'm explaining, okay, we took this, and now I'm here, and he said, well, it looks like you're just stressed. He said, well, I wasn't like this before all these drugs. And he said, well, what would you like me to do about it? And at that point I knew, well, I don't really want you to do anything about it because everything you've done up to this point so far has made it worse. And so I left him, and then we went to, at the time, because I wasn't digesting food at all, and I was losing weight. I lost about 30 pounds by this time in about 2 months.
Did you have 30 pounds to lose?
Yeah, no. Maybe about 20 pounds, would have been nice at the point. But at this point, yeah. 30 pounds, and it was going down daily. The way, and I was eating 6 meals a day. So I went to the GI doctor. He checked me up and down, and he gave me the actual, really good advice, and the advice, I'd asked him if the mental health drugs could damage the gut so well or so much. And he said, we actually use these mental health drugs for the gut, all the time. And he says 90% of all your serotonin, dopamine, that is made in your gut, not in your brain. And at that point, I realized that, hey, this isn't a brain problem at all. This is a gut problem. And
just for anyone listening, that's why your gut's called the second brain. It's so vital to the functionality of the big guy upstairs, the one that, runs all the functioning and, the direction of that.
Yeah, there's more nerve endings in your gut than there are in your brain.
Right.
Which is phenomenal to think about. And at that point, that changed my dynamic. I was still disappointed that he couldn't tell me why I wasn't digesting food, but that led me to, doing my own research and.
So did that click in your body? Why did that feel right to pursue so much of finding out what's going on with you personally? It's insanely individual, although there are some common, diet, exercise, medicines and whatnot. But how did your body kind of like light up when you thought about, okay, I need to go learn about my gut? How did you know to pursue that part?
Well, it was at a point where, you look at the world and it looks like there's no options, there's no choices. And as far as your mind can grasp, you look at it and you just don't know where to go. And that's one of the most discouraging things in life is being, at the end of the road. When he said that, it gave me a hope and a path to chase. And part of it is, as what I do, fixing bikes, and I work in a bike shop, I have become a tremendous fixer. I like to fix hard problems. I like to work through them, and I like that. And so it excited me to give me a new avenue to chase, plus feeling miserable. Hey, anything's awesome at that point.
Right.
So
it activated your creativity and your problem solving skills.
Absolutely. And so that led me to research. Now at the same time, I was paranoid, not sleeping, and anxious, and having anxiety attacks every day. So the extent of it was starting on YouTube, Googling everything, which can be a blessing and a cursing at the same time. But that led me to finding different functional doctors, and I found the functional doctor that I used. My choice in choosing him was his philosophy. He said, we test, we don't guess. And that I'll probably use forever, because, you have to have a path, you have to find the path to follow to fix the problem. And so the only way to do that is, to test, to find out what's wrong and why it's wrong and how it's wrong. So we did with him, we did some testing. We did a DNA stool test, the organic acid test, and a cortisol test. And that was fantastic, because now we actually started to have answers to the questions of what was going on. And if I look over the pathway of where I'd been up to this point, the different things that came out on these tests, like the stool test, we saw staph overgrowth, strep overgrowth, several other bacterias.
These are bacteria in your gut, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm. They're ones that you don't want overgrowthing, both strep and staph overgrowth. 80% of the time when people have these overgrowths, they die. They die shortly and quickly. So the fact that I'm alive, I'm kind of okay with, because the other options,
Well, in a way, this problem pointed you to another root problem that was not coming up for you at the time.
Exactly. Yeah. This brought me to the root cause of what was going on, and so with the functional doctor, he had some supplements, and we changed the diet, and we began to turn things around. It's kind of a very interesting thing, though, because that learning with him and continuing to learn opened up my mind to studying more and more for myself and learning how to fix all these problems. So I learned a lot from him, but I continued to research and understand what causes the anxiety. One of the bacterias would cause stabbing stomach pains, right? And once we got control of that and got that under control, we were able to those pains were able to go away, and I was able to get rid of those symptoms. And I realized that we just need to line up everything and figure out where it comes from and the root cause to fix the problem.
Well, and eliminate some of that wasn't just eating more yogurt. So it was a fundamental shift in your diet, and I think you said initially it was kind of a paleo-esque type diet.
Yeah, it's a paleo diet, and the first part of it is of his diet is getting rid of bad foods. And unfortunately, most everything you get in the grocery store is bad foods.
And I think simple carb rich and sugar rich, right?
Yep, everything's simple carb and sugar rich, which is actually over the time. At first I thought sugar and carbs bad, but I have to change my philosophy, because there was a point we're trying to be healthy and we're trying to do everything right, and my wife had bought some drinks from the store that were, you looked at the label, natural, and we're trying to keep it as clean as possible. And we started drinking them, and the depression I'd been having at the time wasn't very bad at all. It was very, very light. And all of a sudden, it became super, super bad. And I just, suicidality was coming back very, very hard. And, I looked at her, I said, what have we done different? What have I done different? Mm-hmm. Why is this change?
Because of that, you could go back and see, and look for those changes.
Yeah. So we got the drink, and I looked at the label on the drink, and I came back to that because that's the only thing I'd changed. And turns out it had a chemical in it called sucralose. Mm-hmm. And sucralose is in everything, okay? And it's terrible. The reason why it's terrible is because when they make sucralose, they replace molecules of sugar. They take regular sugar and replace it with chlorine. And so inherently it's Poison, yeah. Well, and it's poison, and where you get the really depressive effect is when you consume that, it goes down into your gut, and the bacteria go after it because it's 300 times sweeter than sugar. Mm-hmm. But the chlorine kills them because that's what chlorine does. And so I'd been drinking these drinks full of chlorine that was killing the bacteria. The bacteria is in my gut.
And for those of you that want to start reading your labels, we highly recommend that. Natural flavoring or natural flavors is kind of a catch-all for a bunch of different type of chemicals they use. That it doesn't mean it comes from nature. Yeah,
not all natural sources are good sources.
Exactly.
It's really the truth.
Chlorine is natural.
Chlorine is natural, mm-hmm. and actually chlorine is used by your body. Your body produces chlorine, mm-hmm. but it's about having everything in its place. Mm-hmm. And so when your body attacks viruses and that, some of the cells they contain chlorine, and they'll essentially eat the virus and kill it with the chlorine.
So that's why that combination of caffeine and then the diet, the sucralose, is so powerful, is because the sucralose kind of takes out some of the bacteria. So you need the caffeine to kind of fill up again, and then you don't feel it. But you're killing the bodily resource to fight the depression.
Yeah. So yeah. Well, if you talk about a combination of like caffeine and sucralose, the combination of those that are working together, that's a little bit longer term. If your body's healthy and you've got a really strong gut, you're not going to notice stuff right off the bat. But the effects of caffeine, in opposition to what's happening with sucralose and the chlorine. So the chlorine is going to kill the bacteria and reduce the resources what your body has to do
process food
and create neurotransmitters and that sort of thing. But on the other end, the caffeine ends up ramping up your body's ability to stay awake longer. And the longer and longer you go, where you're pushing it over, you're just depleting yourself. So you end up depleting yourself from both ends. This is why diet drinks are terrible, especially when they're diet with sucralose or some of the other artificial sweeteners. So I don't recommend any artificial sweetener whatsoever. My favorite, if you're going to go for a sweetener, is monk fruit, because it has less glycemic effect. Mm-hmm. and will help keep your insulin in check.
We found a really great monk fruit supplement or sugar type at Costco. So they've made it accessible now, where before it may have been kind of out of the reach of many people, but you can get some pretty economical at Costco.
Yeah, that's where we get our monk fruit from. So we'll do that. But I would rather see people using sugar, just regular old sugar, than any of the artificial sweeteners, because, like, for example, sucralose, it's less sugar, but because it's 300 times sweeter, your body still recognizes that and pumps out insulin, so that it can actually increase your chance of insulin resistance, which is, in the end, a mental health nightmare. The higher your insulin resistance goes, the less ability you have to get rid of the sugar out of your body, and then you end up with inflammation of the brain and all your other organs. Anything that slows down the process of the body is going to contribute to depression, anxiety, and all these things.
Interesting.
So you've got to be able to, you got to keep the body functioning well, and so the first part of the diet is, get rid of that kind of food. And once you do that, you'll start to learn, and see different foods like lecithins. Yeah, lecithins affect me big time. So soy lecithin, stuff like that all affects my depression. So pretty much soy products and stuff like that, I really, really avoid. You end up doing a lot of, going and cooking a lot more and doing your own cooking. And that ends up being phenomenally better for you, because you're not putting, chemically created stuff in your body, and that's what you don't have to get out. One of the things that I'll kind of touch on is, we talked about sucralose, but then there's also artificial colors. The red coloring, it will, almost guarantee an anxiety attack. If you're doing like the Dr. Peppers, the Dr. Pepper, will push you. What I found is mostly people end up, getting a little bit more aggressive and angry. Not in the beginning, because the caffeine's helping out, but the more and more they get into that, they'll get more angry and mean on that. But there's like red velvet cakes that use that. I found that, I'd have an anxiety attack after, anything with the red food colorings. And the food colorings are a little bit different, because they're neurotoxic, and the way they absorb into the body is different than pretty much anything else. So when they get into the gut, they actually absorb through the nerve endings in your gut, and they deposit randomly through your body. Which when we're looking for causes and root causes, they're one of the things that are, just like, that little demon hiding in the closet, because, you may have stuff that's been sitting there for years that it's affecting you, and, nobody knows where to look. Probably the best way to remove that stuff, and it's very difficult, is using cilantro. Cilantro will actually pull it out of the nervous system. And
so real quick, for anybody listening, so, if you're in that place where, hey, I'm just working on being off heroin, and then I'm going to do cigarettes, and then I'll start looking at my diet, I think that what's important here is, first of all, what you're reflecting back to us is 5 years plus of blood, sweat, and tears poured into surviving and being there for your wife and your son and your people, and figuring out this problem that it really matters. And so I don't think if you're listening, don't turn off now, because learning about, hey, the way the food is processed and how your body processes it can really support your efforts to quit smoking or stay off drugs, or allow your body to get rid of some of the alcohol and be higher functioning. So don't take this lightly and don't get overwhelmed. Just pick up one or two things that he's pointing out and use those to add to what you're doing in your life to be more aligned or in tune or clean even.
That's a really good point, because that's something I've thought about, and I definitely wouldn't want to, turn people off to, even the difficulties. But, as I dealt with depression and dealt with this, I started to realize, there's a lot of people, and I've known, plenty of people around me dealing with, addictions and these different things. And you realize that, just with depression, even mild depression, it's not fun. It's just not fun. And so, when people are like I was, you're at a corner, where do you go? What do? You don't want to feel the way you want to feel. You're feeling, and nobody has answers. And you find something, and most of these drugs will make you feel differently than you're currently feeling. And, and that becomes a release. So I understand that path.
Well, and I love that the option to treat the symptoms was not an option for you. So I like how it forced you to look at the root causes. And so for those of you listening, the medications, it's miraculous and wonderful and all that stuff. However, if it's just masking what's going on, it's going to compound the problems, not going anywhere. In fact, it's probably going to go underground and create more. Your body will ask you to pay attention one way or another. So now, what a blessing that you were not given the option to look at something that could mask the symptoms.
Yeah, it's a very good blessing, but the realization I made is, as I realized that sometimes things happen to have to happen one step at a time. For example, when I was on venlafaxine or Avexor,
those are the antidepressant drugs.
Yeah, mm-hmm. Yeah. So they're very, very misleading in how they present them. And if you're on them and they're helping you, and it's managing your life and you're in a good place, some people actually have good success with them.
Rock and roll.
In that's exactly what I say. Rock and roll, do what it is. But that particular drug, there's two parts to it, and one has a half-life. So a half-life is the time that it takes for your body to be able to get rid of the drug. If they say a half-life is 1 day, it's 1 day till you've got half of that drug in your system. So it ends up taking about 5 times the amount of time, as they call the half-life, for it to be out of your system and not affecting you anymore. So that particular drug actually had it was like a 5-day half-life is what they called it. But when you got into the component parts of the drug, the other half, and I'm not remembering the actual name of that part, but it had a 25-day half-life. So you're almost out to 5-6 months, depending on how healthy your liver is, in getting that out of your system. So when you look at this, and this is with any drug, right? The effects of it are going to take a while. And doing one thing at a time, tackling one dragon at a time, is really, really smart, because you want to tackle that, and then you can recognize the next step and that progression. So I actually remember, about 6 months out, where I felt completely different.
Wow.
And because I'd studied the effects and how it makes you feel so much, like I noticed several things just disappear. And so once I knew, I'm like, okay, those are gone, it made it easier to, okay, now we're going to take step 2 and keep working. And it is a process. It takes time, but you get better. You do, you just be patient, and work out of that place.
One of my favorite phrases is brick by brick to make it stick. Build that brick by brick and it'll stick. And then when you're at 6 months, you'll start feeling that momentum, or 3 months, or whatever it is. Long view, long term, you're going to be in this body for another 50, 80, whatever the time frame is, years. Take the long view and it will reward you.
And that's exactly right. And so, that was step 1, and then I kept working on the process, got to step 2, and step 2 is just, that continual, okay, what do I need to work on next? Mm-hmm. How do I refine and do a little bit better? How
did you make the connection between what's going on with your gut with adrenal fatigue?
That was the YouTube video I came across. Thomas DeLauer. I like a lot of his stuff, and he's the type of guy that he's a bodybuilder. So half his videos are him with his shirt off, flexing. And not the type of guy that I would have watched ever before that, because there's a lot of information out there, and some of it's kind of silly. But he had a video about adrenal fatigue, and I was feeling pretty much like garbage. At this point, I'd had anxiety attacks every day about 9 and not sleeping at all at night kind of thing. So heart palpitations.
And real quick, so when he says not sleeping, we're talking 30 minutes at a time. If that, right?
Yeah. So, some nights it was watch the sun go down, watch the sun come up, kind of stuff, with 2 to 3 minute naps in between. And, at this point was literally you go to, I fall asleep, wake up a couple minutes later, maybe 30 minutes, maybe 20 minutes, maybe, and then finally the sun's coming back up in the morning. That was
torturous.
Yeah, months and months and months of that, it was absolutely horrible. I don't wish it upon anyone, and pray for anyone out there that's in that boat. But at this time, I'd come across this video. I was trying to figure out, about the anxiety attacks and trying to find a good solution. And he in this video gives a recipe for dealing with adrenal fatigue and the anxiety attacks, which is simply 4 ounces of orange juice, 1/4 teaspoon of cream of tartar, and 1/4 teaspoon of Himalayan pink salt, which is great, some fancy recipe. But then he goes into the science of why it works and how it works. And inherently, the mechanism for an anxiety attack is your adrenal glands. Your adrenal glands produce epinephrine and cortisol. And cortisol is what causes the anxiety feelings. It's the overthinking. Imagine, it's the fight or flight mode. So, you're getting attacked by a bear, so all your senses are super heightened. You're paying attention to everything. You're super focused. You're running away, and your blood's pumping faster. Your digestion shuts down because the epinephrine shuts down your digestion. Dilates the blood vessel, so the heart has to pump harder. In most people's anxiety attack situation, there's no bear. It just happens, and so all of a sudden, you're having the response of being chased by a bear. Heart beating harder, you have this increased sense of paying ultra attention to everything, but there's nothing really to pay attention, which is the freaky part, and that's
and your adrenal gland is responsible for that chemistry to release to the body. And
yep, and your adrenal glands are. So this little recipe, so in the cream of tartar, there's 400 milligrams of potassium. And then with your salt that you use in there, the salt and the potassium will calm down the adrenal glands. And the vitamin C in the orange juice just helps you absorb it. And at that point, so I made that up, drank that actually in the morning. I also recommended to take ashwagandha with it, which is, ashwagandha is an adaptogenic herb, and it just helps your body adapt to stress. So it's gonna help you deal with stress better.
Which adaptability is a hallmark of happy people.
So yeah, I took that, and in the morning before we went to work, and at this point, I just sit in the car all day and answer questions for my wife, or maybe go in and do one or two things because it's just so overwhelming. But
just for anyone who's listening who hears this very articulate, calm, well-delivered, well-spoken gentleman in a car, in the heat, panic attack, so gripped by it that can't even get out of the car, and you're just answering questions as best you can while your wife is making the business go, and that's about as serious as it gets.
Yeah, you're just trying to hold everything together. You've got a big ship, and you feel like you can't drive it, but you're trying to. Mm-hmm. And so yeah, and that's for my anxiety attacks. It was a fantastic recipe. I started sleeping again, and by the end of the week, I did pretty much drink it every day. By the end of the week, the anxiety attacks were gone, and so I was super happy with that. Occasionally they'll come, you'll get anxiety and that around, and I love that drink. No real side effects. It's fantastic. It's it's loaded with the potassium in that is actually, I think, really the magic number with the salt, because that's so crucial for your body, is to have lots of potassium and salt. Your body needs about 5,000 milligrams of potassium daily, And again, going back to the diet, most of the processed food, they actually strip it out of. Milk normally has tons of potassium in it. So if you look at the labels on regular gallon of milk and then go to the organic grass-fed milk, you'll see that regular milk has 0, and then organic grass-fed will typically have between 500 and 600 milligrams per cup.
Wow.
Which is huge, because you can have 2 cups of milk, and be near 1,200 milligrams of potassium.
Do you like bananas for your potassium?
No, I'm not a banana fan.
Gotcha.
If you like bananas, go ahead, eat them. That's fine. But they have a higher sugar content, and when I can do a cup of milk and lower the sugar,
big deal.
It is a big deal. Sweet potatoes are great.
Great, right?
Yeah, avocados, another fantastic thing, And then once you can start getting your potassium up to the levels, your anxiety is going to be a lot lower all the time. But you want to stick to around about 5,000 milligrams dietary potassium daily.
So there's this recipe that he's given us that is well-researched, proven, simple, very, very cost-effective. Also be aware, if you're listening to this chemistry of anxiety is also highly addictive. So as you're healing from one thing, you don't want to then allow yourself to be a crazy maker, go after drama, pursue really, really high sensationary entertainment, because then you're just generating that same chemistry, and you can get addicted to that because you feel that high or that rush or whatever, especially if you start then abusing nicotine or caffeine after that as well. So it's a practice as much as it is your body's response to telling you what it's needing or not getting and how to respond more completely to your stimulus.
That's actually, super important because, the body is a sensory organ. When you look at it externally, you got your eyes, your ears, you're seeing, you're hearing, you're touching, you're feeling, you're tasting, you're smelling. These are all sensory organs, and they're designed to sense and feel things. So that's the external, and then the internal is not that much different. All the communication that happens, as a sensory organ, right? So you have neurotransmitters, your hormones. They're sent out, to different parts of your body to, give commands and stimulate things to happen. So you have this great degree of stimulation. As a whole, like 90% of what our body has to deal with is stimulation. And so the overstimulation, especially you can see it very well externally, the overstimulation requires the production of all the neurotransmitters, hormones, and everything. And it's just like in a car, if you can go and go and go, but you're going to run out of gas. Mm-hmm. And when you run out of gas, things stop and they don't work. The same is true for, your bodies. But it manifests differently because your body, it prioritizes things so that the most important things are done. That doesn't mean you're going to have
not the healthiest or most positive or
Exactly. And so, you get in there, different activities, the stimulations, if you're doing stimulations every day, watching, exciting movies, or over exercising even, you can burn through a lot of stuff.
Over clicking.
Yeah. There's so many different ways in our world right now to overstimulate the body. Then your body has to sit and create neurotransmitters and hormones to do all this on the inside. And when you talk about depletion of neurotransmitters and hormones and stuff, and running out of chemicals, well, there's a simple answer to why, people start to feel, depression and maybe anxiety and different things is because the gas tank's running on low. And so you don't have the ability. So there's 2 parts to that. You do have that external stimulation that's sucking the tanks dry, but then we also run, and this goes back to the diet, and we're going to take it a step further. So with the doctor, we dealt with, the bad foods. We got rid of those, and then we started getting the good foods in. But a lot of people, you say, well, I have a great diet and I, only eat healthy food and I only eat organic food, but I still have a problem. And that problem comes from the next step. And this is where diving deep and starting to research and understand for yourself can help a ton, because eating the right foods is good, but being able to digest the foods and actually absorb them is
huge.
Everything.
Yeah.
Because that's how you get it into your body.
Especially in the supplement world, a lot of the supplements that are taken are not bioavailable.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you can, you can eat all the supplements in the world, but if you can't absorb them, then you're not getting anything. So the next step is to, in healing, is to heal the body's ability to digest, which may start at the mouth with chewing. Some people don't chew their food, and so it's going down in large chunks. And then it's requiring the stomach and everything else to try and deal with these larger chunks. You have the teeth to break things down into very, very small bits, so that when it gets into the stomach acid can cover the material. And stomach acid breaks down.
And real quick, when we're talking about the mastication part, we're talking 30, 40, 50 chews on food, not just the 3 to 8 that you might think is all is necessary.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, 3 to 8. So it's something that I've done in the past. I'm guilty of. I think everyone is guilty of it. It takes practice to actually relax, take time, chew your food. Don't take that 5-minute lunch. And start running again. But that's the beginning of the process. So you look at that process. And we say, okay, now we've got the chewing part done. Now what's next? And then it's the stomach. How's your stomach acid? Are you taking tons of antacids? One of the myths about like GERD or reflux is that it's caused by, too much stomach acid, or, too acid stomach acid. But the myth is that it's actually too little stomach acid, or too low or too high of a pH. Because you have valves on the top and bottom of your stomach that when you have a pH of between 1 and 2, that's what stimulates them to lock closed. So if you've got good stomach acid, you're, in rare situations you might have issues, from other things, but 99% of the time, if you've got stomach acid or reflux problems, you're going to have problems because of low or high pH and the low stomach acid, because it's not closing the valves on your stomach.
Interesting.
And so, and then the stomach acid again is required for breaking down proteins into amino acids, which now we get down to the point of breaking down food into its building blocks. So your body can actually use the food. So, in order to use proteins, you can eat all the protein you want. You can eat steak all day long, but if you don't break it down into an amino acid, then your body can't utilize it. And any protein that's not broken down is actually damaging to your gut. And so developing and working on good stomach acid will actually help build the amino acids that your body needs for good mental health, good focus. And one of the keys to doing that, I'll go back to that little recipe I learned, the potassium, and getting good potassium in your diet will allow your body to produce good stomach acid. So
yeah, that's one of the things you point out as one of these underappreciated bodily functions that now you have a very high degree of appreciation and value, and it is the stomach acid.
Yeah, the stomach acid is amazing. The stomach is your guardian for your body, because you eat food and it's full of bacterias and stuff. Even if you cook it right, there will still be surface area bacterias, stuff that was on the forks and this and that. And the stomach acid is designed to purify your food before it hits the small intestine and the large intestine, because ideally your body wants to protect the bacteria that's further on down the line. They want to protect that microbiome, because that is super, super crucial for mental health, all along the way.
Yeah, that's when you were talking about how you got the feedback from the functional doctor about the stool testing and your
The organic acid.
the organic acid. Yeah. So the urinal testing as well. Right. That's the P. That's how they tested the P. So when you're getting that, I thought you were going to go to microbiome. And so what did they find out about your microbiome? And just so anybody listening, the microbiome is the biosphere in your digestive system and the health or lack of health based on bacteria, how, the fingers in your intestines that actually grab the food and digest it, right? And how active they are. And
yeah, so your microbiome inherently is all the bacteria, yeast, and everything in your gut. And so when we did the testing on mine, we had, there were 5 different bacteria that were overgrowth: a staph, a strep, a couple of different variants of those, and then I can't remember the name of it, something fragilis, and then I had the candida overgrowth there. And so that, so inherently, I like to look at it this way. You got to look at it as an imbalance.
Yeah, it's not bad or good or anything. It's just imbalance.
Yeah, those are bacteria you normally have in your gut, but when they're imbalanced, that's when the problem comes in, because we need a good balanced profile in the gut in order to produce all the things. Because bacteria are they're good for you. The yeast in your gut is good for you.
Necessary.
Yeah, it's necessary because bacteria actually produce B vitamins, which are absolutely key for building neurotransmitters and hormones and brain cells, and and so it's super, super important for that. And the bacterias, they produce those B vitamins when you eat fibers, and they get down in your gut. Fiber, so the fiber from like plants and that sort of thing, they're not digested at all until you get to the large intestine, which is where all your bacteria resides. There's pretty much everything is done in that large intestine. There's a small intestine does things, but as far as B vitamins are concerned, and the majority of your bacteria, they live in the large intestine. And so you need to have the population balanced in that area. And there's several things that can cause the imbalance. We've talked about the foods and different things. I did want to touch on this. So a lot of people, they get hooked on probiotics, or the yogurts or kefirs or kombuchas, which are okay, but most of that stuff gets killed in the stomach because that's the stomach's job. The truth is, though, is what's more important than focusing on repopulating bacteria is actually focusing on the environment that they live in. And this is what a lot of people miss when you come to gut health and healing that way. You've got to be able to repair the gut lining, because that's like the housing. If you've ever lived somewhere you didn't like living, you didn't want to live there.
Yep.
And it wasn't good. It was hard to live there. And so just sending a bunch of good bacteria into a bad neighborhood just means you're going to kill off a bunch of good bacteria.
What a great analogy.
So it's what it is. And I'm going to rewind a bit back to the stomach, because gut lining, the best way to produce good gut lining is by having good stomach acid. Because when your stomach pumps out that acid, it actually stimulates the production of gut lining, because it knows when the food leaves the stomach and goes into the intestines that it's loaded with, super acidic acid. It's not good. And that's why GERD doesn't feel good. And that's so at that point, it has to say, okay, start producing more gut lining, because we're going to damage it to some degree. Now your pancreas puts out the bicarbonate to try and bring down the pH, but there's still a degree of damage. But if you can do what's necessary to stimulate gut lining, you're going to produce a good environment, and then that'll allow the bacteria to live and thrive and balance in all the bacteria. And they'll be able to live there and help you absorb. And we come back full circle to being able to absorb the nutrients and to resupply the body with neurotransmitters and hormones and tissues
Amino
and
acids.
brain stuff. And that's really, the key. You may have, people do have genetic deficiencies. There's all these things, but the first line is having the resources and maintaining the resources, and and saving the resources. So not overstimulating yourself all the time.
What are some foods you found that fed the bad bacteria or too much, put it out of balance? Did you find a couple of foods that were really not creating a good environment in your gut?
So really, we mentioned anything with sucralose is there. Another thing that the bad foods is, when we look at GMO products, and this is where you almost have to avoid, most all wheat and corn products.
Mm-hmm.
There's
and
a lot.
GMO stands for genetically modified.
Yeah, genetically modified. The problem with this is, and I can't remember if I mentioned it or not, but the study they did on the pH of acid and how well it breaks down amino acid, they used 5 different proteins in this study. And the 3 that were natural, they broke down in in about 2 minutes under a pH of 1 and 2.
That's a healthy pH, right?
Yeah, that's where you want to be. But the GMO proteins never broke down. Mm-hmm. And when you have proteins that can't be broken down, protein in the wrong place is poison. So it's like a snake bite. Snake venom is protein. But when it's in your leg, it shouldn't be. And so when you're not breaking down proteins and it goes through your small intestine and large intestine, it's inflammatory and it's going to cause damage and it's going to cause leaky gut and it's going to cause a lot of those issues. So when you look at foods, the low hanging fruit or the worst ones to get are the the modified foods. Mm-hmm. Because they're not going to break down properly and they're just going to be a continual source of damage. And most people have no clue that, their chronic issues are just coming from something that should be healthy. There shouldn't be anything wrong, or should be very little wrong with consuming wheat. The problem is wheat has been modified. We were just up in Idaho, and if you look in the fields of wheat out there, they're all about 2 feet high, and they all grow, just about the same, and they've modified these foods so that there's, or they can spray the fields with wheat with, the pesticides, mm-hmm. and they won't die, and they'll kill all the weeds, and then they've modified them so they only grow the right height so the tractors can harvest them evenly and easily. So they're modified for production, but not necessarily very well for consumption.
Interesting.
So,
and then we didn't even touch on, and we're going to bring this down to the end here, but we didn't even touch on the supply chain of looking at what you're bringing into your body as your supply chain and managing that and taking care of that. Can you touch on that?
Yeah. The supply chain is, and this is an analysis thing. When you look at mental health and that your body it prioritizes stuff. If you have a lower supply chain, or if you have, if your supermarket only has 50% of the foods in there, that's the options you get to choose from, and it has to prioritize what it uses, what it gets, and what it does. And so by having a healthy gut and having that allows for full absorption and greater absorption, which inherently fills the supermarket of the body. So the body doesn't have to make choices on, well, we're low on, A or B, B vitamin or, amino acid. So we're only going to, make the most important things. It'll be able to make everything, and when the supply chain's full, the options are good. Everything feels good. You go to the grocery store, it's the toilet paper issue with COVID.
Yeah, right.
Everyone's going, well, we get a deal without
some
COVID.
Clorox wipes, exactly.
Imagine your mental health that way, Why are some things happening? Well, it might be because, there's no toilet paper in the body supermarket,
One of the ways we teach it to our kids is your taste buds are not the boss of you. they're not in charge of what goes in your mouth. It's your brain and what's healthy for your muscles, and then your taste buds get to decide.
Yeah, that's just it. And starting to learn to practice and cook different will actually change. You can cook things differently, and all of a sudden, like my son he'll have a bowl of salad and a slice of pizza. That's kind of the way he looks, and we actually brought him up, to eat more greens and eat more of this, and consequently, he still likes more greens and better, healthier stuff. So
crazy. Your supply chain is better for your body, and it will want more of what's better for it.
Yeah, it's a lot of it's not obvious common sense.
It's true. Well, so let's keep it real. And this is not a complaint on the food industry. It just is what it is. But learning how to read labels and what ingredients mean for your body is where a real effort of education. And what I love about what you're bringing to the table today is you've always been in your body, but this ordeal gave you the option to be radically responsible for what goes in your body and be responsible. I know you've always been a responsible person, but be responsible for the performance of your brain and your heart and your gut and how you feel in a way that transforms your life.
Yeah, you do. It brings back to the concept. It is a concept I've had for a while, and it just keeps getting bigger the more I learn. But it is, when you're born, no one hands you a manual. They don't say, okay, this is how to live to have like the most awesome life. And so consequently, we get to learn, and we get to have experiences, and we get to do this. And we begin to grow our own manuals, and food is one of those.
Mm-hmm.
There's everything in life isn't meant for consumption, and things can be consumed, but they're not necessarily meant for it. And so, as we go through our life, that's our job. We need to learn what's best for us and our bodies, and everyone. Not everyone in the world has your best interest in mind.
Well said.
So you need to have your best interest in mind. Not to go into religion too much, but one of my favorite things is, as Jesus says, he says, love thy neighbor as thyself. It's one of my favorite things ever, and people get it wrong, and even if you're not religious, you can use...
And by the way, you can bring religion as much as you want.
Okay.
Because we didn't even touch on the spiritual aspect of this provided for you, which I know is deep and profound.
But I know everyone has their path, and I like them not to be scared away just because I mentioned the word. And but in this, it says, okay, you got to love your neighbor as thyself, and it's kind of a backwards statement. Most people think, oh, I'm going to go love my neighbor, but they haven't yet learned to love themselves. And loving yourself is learning how to take care of yourself, learning how to do it. So if you don't know about money, don't go help your neighbor with money. If you don't know about health, don't go help your neighbor with health. Take the time and learn about health for yourself, and learn about these things, and learn, get deep, find the root causes, find the mechanisms, find the answers. And at that point, then you can offer assistance. You can say, hey, take a look at this. This is something new.
I love the tie-in there. That's incredible. I mean, that for me, when I learned what that axiom really meant, that you need to love yourself so that you can give that to your neighbor, total game changer for me. So I want to bring it home on that, but before I forget, can you share one or two things that you learned about doing research that helped you find good resources of all the information that's out there? What did you learn to dial into good resources and good content that was worth your time?
So I think the best way to research is to realize it's okay to listen to nonsense. Okay, something that doesn't make sense it's okay, but make sure you look at all ends of the spectrum. So I like to look at what study groups have done and scientists have done. I like to look at all of that, but I also like to look at anecdotal stuff and then because it opens up your range of vision. That doesn't mean you do everything that you research and you look into, but it'll help you. It'll help you find a path better, because rather than just finding a single path and wandering it down it, you'll be able to look over the whole valley and see everything. So you want to be able, don't necessarily dismiss stuff just because it's a little bit fringe, but back it up by science. I like to go to National Institute of Health. I love to read through technical documents and stuff like that. It takes a little bit to get it. So sometimes that can be a little bit technical, but I like to look at the whole field of everything, and that way you can start to make sense of why were they doing this research? Was it for monetary gain, or was it because they were just sincerely interested? Just a very, very short thing that I looked into and found phenomenally interesting was actually borax. Okay. It's,
for those of you who don't know, it's intended to clean clothes.
Yes. When you hear the word borax, that's what you see.
20 mule team borax. Yeah.
Fantastic. And if you look at the label on that and you see tetraborate, and tetraborate's very, very interesting. When you go to National Institute of Health and research tetraborate, it's the number one best beneficiary thing for osteoporosis, rheumatoid arthritis, and 1,000 other things. Obviously, you've got to know the science of how you would use this. Normally, you actually get it through fruits. The fruit trees will absorb it out of the ground, and you'll get it through fruits. If you're familiar with boron, a lot of boron comes from tetraborate. And so, and boron is phenomenally good for increasing vitamin D absorption. Oh. The research on that is fantastic. But again, that was something that when I first heard about it, I'm like, that's absolute nonsense. But consequently, you'll find they use it as a preservative in food. It's an actual preservative that's good for you. And if you use contacts, it's in your contacts fluid that you put in, your eyeballs. So, not necessarily dangerous, but you have to understand, proportions and why, but had I just gone off my first, clinch, why would anyone use a cleaner, for your health? But consequently it is used whether you know it or not, for those things. But don't close your mind, but don't be so open that your brains fall out.
I love that. And if you don't take the time now, your body will graciously cause you to take the time later. So taking the time now really makes a big difference in your experience of this amazing body you're supposed to feel incredible in. And we get glimpses of that, and we're very grateful for that. Thank you so much for being on today. I love the application. I like how clearly spoken your science and application was. Some of the takeaways is don't abuse your system. So learn what's going on. Take some responsibility. Your gut or your stomach acid, super important. Use professionals. Find professionals that work for you. Incredible. Amazing.
Yeah. And just, I guess my little thing is, it's just take one thing, do one thing. If it can make you a little bit better, great. And then, if you can share that and help 20 other people, and then we're achieving what is a little bit of my goal, get rid of or reduce this anxiety and depression, get people a little bit happier every day, just a little bit.
Just a little bit, or a little less sad. Yep.
Yeah.
Either way.
Less sad.
Love thy neighbor as thyself. Well, you are mad crazy, committed to being mentally healthy. Thank you. This is Shay. I'm a Brain Warrior Aslet on the Winning Together podcast. Thank you for joining us. If we can help, if I Am Recovery, who sponsors this podcast, can be a resource in that, over that valley of finding what's going to work for you, find them on the web, imrtc.com or 801-407-9998. And if you need a bike fix, go get it fixed at
the Bike Barn.
The Bike Barn in Lehi. All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day. Cheers.